Hello, everyone. Now, there's a muffin in that corner that belongs to me. Respect the muffin. That's my lunch. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. My name is Grace Law, and I'm chair of the Department of Architecture here at the Harvard GSD. Positions, our departmental lecture series, is a series of conversations convened by our department aimed at revealing the positions taken by players on the field of contemporary architecture. So the series hopes to unfold the complexity of relations and metaphors to make them explicit, inviting faculty and guests to voice where they stand. So today we are delighted to welcome Jon Lott. Let me tell you a little bit about Jon. Jon is Associate Professor of Architecture here at the GSD and founding principal of Para Project and co-founder of the collective LOK Clock Lock Clock. Jon's work is informed by a commitment to architecture as a speculative pursuit, with projects of varying scales and media from cultural, institutional, and residential work to events and international competitions. Jon is the recipient of the Emerging Voices Award by the Architectural League of New York, the Design Vanguard Award by Architectural Record, New Practices New York Award by the AIA New York, the Architectural League Prize, yada, 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 lots and lots and lots. The AR Emerging Finalist by the Architectural Review, Young Architects Finalist by the Museum of Modern Art in New York. So lots of accolades and recognition. He has previously taught at Syracuse, directing the School of Architecture's New York City program for them. And as associate professor here at the GSD, he is currently teaching Core 3 for our department. We are currently sitting within his exhibition here in the Loeb Library, titled Models Themselves, which assembles physical models that you can see here from across Jon's body of work, including projects such as the Brugg Diptych, which I hope we'll hear about, and a number of houses. And many of these will be featured in his upcoming book called Proximities. So please join me in welcoming Jon Lott.
Thank you for coming. Thanks, Grace. Okay, here we go. This is actually really strange to be talking about the work in an exhibition that shows the work. I've never had that experience before, so it's just new, FYI. I wonder if I could just ask a question before I start, let's say, presenting. I'm a little bit suspicious of presentation, I'll say. And if you could just toss out, I'll give you 10 seconds, toss out adjectives for this drawing. Just curious what comes to mind.
Mirror stage.
Mirror stage. Anything else? The clock is ticking. That's it. That's it? Okay. Threshold? Okay, what else?
Oblique.
Oblique? Anything else?
Aperture.
Aperture.
Housey house.
Housey house. Who said that? Oh yeah, but we've talked about it, so you already know. Okay, anyway, positions. I think of it more like prepositions, and Grace is right. I'm thinking a lot about proximities. I have a new book coming out called Proximities. And I also think about it, the work with respect to this, some idea of reflexive formalism. I think, and I don't know what the format actually is, but I think these things are like two people going back and forth. So I'm just going to do that with myself. And I think that one of the prompts for the initial selection of material was about influence. Who are your influences? Cristiano of Superstudio, Cristiano Torraldo di Francia of Superstudio, was one of my critics as an undergraduate for a year. I studied with Cristiano, and he just totally transformed how I think about the architectural predicament. It was just amazing to talk with him and study with him. So that's me in the class. I'm in the back. Cristiano's in the front. Marco Brizzi, maybe some of you know, he's kind of on the scene over there in Italy still. And over on the left is Johnny Petna, who I also studied with. They were like co-critics for the year, okay? On a personal note, these are a little bit of confessions. I was also I was a punk rocker, basically, and before studying architecture, and I was hanging out with, these guys, my influences are like the Suck Dolls and Bikini Kill. That's me playing in a punk rock band. At the same time, I'm making models. Early on, I started making models like as a 15-year-old. My public high school, for whatever reason, had an architectural drawing class, and we also made models. Anyway, that's me at 15. Has anyone seen Barbie? No? No? Yeah, just show of hands. How many people have seen it? Okay. Okay. There's a lot about models here, right? How about rehearsal? Anyone seen rehearsal? Yeah? Chuckle? Yeah, it's pretty good. All the younger. Okay, good. Michael's tapped into what the I see next gen. Okay, it's hilarious. It's funny. It's really insightful way of recreating spaces and spatial conditions, dealing with scale, one-to-one models. This is a mock-up of a bar built in a warehouse, so they reenact all these things. By the way, the owner of that original alligator was my first client in Brooklyn, so I know that person very. And then, this is terrible, but things like this, playing with scale. Okay. A little bit more autobiographical intro, and then this is my thesis, prep statement, my undergraduate thesis. And I'm not going to read it verbatim, but I'm just going to tell you it's an allegory, okay? It's called Allegory of the Objectified Object. A little girl wants a doll, and she sees it advertised. Her best friend has one too. She sees it at the store in a package hanging, and she doesn't have the money to buy it. So as soon as she gets some money, she earns the money, and she buys the doll, and she brings it home to play dress up. After a little while, the dog gets a hold of the doll, and not knowing what it means to the little girl, considers it a chew toy, basically, and has his way with it. And the little girl is damaged and scared and sad, and she gets it fixed, and it soon returns to playtime. But at a certain point, the big sister gets a hold of the doll, and she's upset with the little girl. And she, in a vindictive rage, abuses the doll, sets it on fire, sets it at the door of the little girl. Let's say to send a message. This was my thesis proposal, which is, I hope you can see the rearrangement of doll parts, in a way challenging the image of a thing and thinking about it as a material and as a certain properties, and anyway, considering the thing beyond its image. Another little personal. Okay, so I studied at Cal Poly as an undergrad, and my thesis advisor was Karen Lang, and she let us do that kind of thing, and I was happy about it. But her partner, Jon Lang, ran a studio. This is my third year undergraduate project. What you see here is a model of a house. And Jon gave us this prompt that we were to design a house on a hill, had a very specific site in Pismo Beach, California. And you had to just start building the house in the studio on day one. No drawings, no study models. You built the thing at half scale from day one till the end of the semester. And you could only work on, anyway, that, right? There was nothing else. It was build the house. And you showed up and you built. And it was amazing. And so there's a lot of edits and a lot of reconfiguration, built the site, and then anyway, it was incredible. Very weird and idiosyncratic, but very memorable as a pedagogical tool. I also studied here as a student, and one of the studios I had was with Rem. Rem taught a design studio. We went to Seoul, and we designed a campus center for Yonsei University, and the prompt was that it didn't fit above ground. It had to all be below ground, and the whole thing, or whatever. So, had this kind of radical prompt, huge building below ground. And so we played with section. And we made this, crazy collage. That's Kiego, who worked for Ome for a long time. And we were playing around with this kind of relationship of let's say, the interior, not the object, the organization of architecture, not its image, not its exteriority, right? And we made these big models to study it. It was, we really got into this thing as a giant retaining wall with all these voids and made things like this. And when I was leaving school, I also, in a response to something in a 306090 publication, I had this little prompt with a little essay called Lifting Mies, and it was just really questioning architecture as an image project and how we're threatened by that, I think, and we're bombarded by it anyway. How do you think he looks? And this came out when I was leaving school, The Ecstasy of Influence, and I happened to read it. I don't flip through Harper's very often, but I happened to catch this one, and it sort of blew me away. And it's a response, if you know, to this, The Anxiety of Influence by Bloom. Anyway, I'm not going to go into it, but the text on the left was like, it hit me like, wow, it's all about the second use of culture, right? About architects, I think, staying generalists. And we played, early on, I played with things like this to make points about the hazard of the image project and the race for communication through iconography and the project of vanity and all that. I'm suspicious of that. So we made these things, some friends of mine, about the absurdity of the image project. And then we had a little install at the Architectural League, playing with that absurdity. So a couple of things I care about are readings versus representations. That's why I asked for your thoughts. Methods versus image. The two texts that matter most to me, and here they are in the exhibition, The Theory of Prose by Viktor Shklovsky, which is about readings. How do we produce readings? As architects, I think about it as an art form. That's how I approach it. And this text is amazing. Does anyone know it? Does anyone know this text? Okay. Analysis, kind of, right? Anyway, it's about how readings are produced within art forms, I think. So I want to talk a little bit more about that. And then on the right, about methods. Does anyone know this text? I'm just curious. It's outside. It's like acting theory. About method acting. I want to read a little bit from this. An architect removes all signs from their places. An architect always incites insurrection among things. Things are always in a state of revolt with architects, casting off their old names and adopting new names and new faces. An architect employs images as figures of speech by comparing them with each other. So that part's important to me. Skipping down, another way to do it, the comparative act, getting a reading from something. Another way to do it is by progressive step structure. The object divides into 2 or 3 segments that reflect or confront each other, produced as readings. We see here 2 thoroughly incongruous concepts, yet each displaces the other from its respective cluster of conventional associations, and at times the object is reduplicated or dismembered. So this is really the power of estrangement, okay? The author refusal to recognize things by their names, describing things as if they had been seen for the first time, or estrangement. And I think estrangement is important in my work. Okay, this text, which is about acting theory, and it really was the thing that, let's say, led to method acting in that art form. It's incredibly powerful, and we read it in the seminar. Does anyone know who this is? A lot of references up front. Sorry, I'm going to give you a little bit, like, where are we going with this? A lot of references up front, and then a little taste of some work, and then I'm going to share the projects, okay? Does anyone know who this is? It's a skateboarder. His name is Neil Blender. And he figured out a way to go a little higher with his athletic act. This is Tony Hawk. Who doesn't even know who that is? A more famous skateboarder, right? Back when we were all trying to figure out how to go higher with our backside airs, Neil Blender demonstrated that you can arch your back and pull up your legs behind you in order to get more height without having to get more speed. He told us that's the method air. Anyway, method before image. What someone else has done versus a kind of impulse to try it another way. Stanislavski is critical of the form of acting that relied on representation. So Stanislavski is also critical of the representation project, acting through costume. What we would call as skateboarders a poser, someone who dressed like a skater but didn't skate. Okay, and this relies on this form of acting. Relies, I think, on bullshit. Does anyone know this text? I used to give it to my students. It's really quite good, especially when you compare it with. He's a philosopher at Princeton. Especially when you pair it with his partnered text on truth. But we're post-truth, right? So what does that mean? And how we've arrived post-truth with alternative facts and fake news and. To replace actual facts, perhaps feelings have more weight than evidence. So I have a recent feeling to share with you. See if I can get it. Here it is. Architecture has lost its relationship to physics, laws of attraction, repulsion, equal and opposite forces, position, and momentum. It's lost its use, the marriage of geography in the country of the mind, lost in the credit and craft, production and labors of its economy, the heft and scale of things, lost in an image on a screen, and things had light, and light had things, and things had warmth or fevers. All the world smuggled into its framing, the death of things, the life of things, things that allow animals to act inside with other animals, most often made by other animals. We call that architecture, the constant rearrangement of the material, the dam, of the flow of what is close. And I think about proximities and prepositions and the comparative act between parts that are close rather than what they refer to or represent. And so Stanislavski gets into this notion of the method, or really, if you get to the bottom of it, channeling one's own experiences into their art form. Okay, you'll notice that each of the projects have paired models. This one is a pair. The diptych over there is also a pair. It's 2 and 1. Anyway, as you go around, they all have two in a way. Making comparisons is the only good method in a world in which things take on consistency only in relation to others. Comparison may be implicit or explicit, but without it, the mind cannot function. Only one who knows one thing only doesn't even know that thing. I love this, and it just is kind of core to how I approach the formalism. Vija Selman's. This really hit me when I saw it. I saw it twice. First at SF MoMA, and then I believe it was at the Whitney before the new one. Anyway, Vija Selman's. She's a sculptor. On one side, does anyone know this diptych? No. On one side is a found rock. On the other side is a sculpted rock, made to look and feel a lot like the found rock. And I think it's a beautiful study in the comparative act with one's art form, causing attention to one's art form. How is this? Right? You begin to ask questions about its material, etc. So I like that. comparative act in a work. But I think about it a bit more like this, another one of her diptychs, which is also a found slate, but and a sculpted slate. And I like this one because it's spatial, right? It's not object for object. It's a space for a space, let's call it. Another couple of references. This one matters a lot. Has anyone seen Heretic? Yeah. What did you think?
Well, I grew up LDS Mormon.
Okay.
So this immediately targets.
It does go after religion. You're right.
Also post-Mormon or ex-Mormon. So
Okay.
It's very, very specific. It's a very fascinating reflection on religious deconstruction.
That's right. Yeah. It's about a kind of the iterations of ideologies, right? Anyway, it's really powerful and it has models, right? It uses models. It's very interesting. Recommended psychological thriller. Anyway, so I play with this kind of iterative, reflexive formalism, which is about a sort of set of redundancies that begin to call attention between the parts present rather than the parts that are. So play with this idea for a wall, a roof for a roof. This is the wall for a wall at Storefront for Art and Architecture in, I think, 2016. And this is the installation, which is a construction fence in the city, deliberately what they use everywhere, but very specifically proportioned and some other things. But it had a disassembly stage, which revealed its structure and allowed for the exhibition to spill out onto the street. This wall, in a way, an iteration of Stephen and Vito's wall, putting it on display and vice versa, considering what they were up to when they were trying to engage people on the street, and in a way trying a version of that too here. But not just commentary. It literally doubled the size of the gallery for the duration of the show. So they had a whole extra, bay, let's call it. And so it was this kind of one thing putting the other into consideration. That's how I. And so in the back, you see all these works in progress throughout the city, which each has its own construction fence. In any way, it's a commentary on the urbanism of New York, of temporality of construction in the city. You deal with these fences all over the city. They're a reality to its need for change, and et cetera. So all this works in progress were on display here. And this was my work in progress. Okay, and another one, which is like roof for a roof, was not built, unfortunately, but it was for a gallery in West Hollywood, California. And the owner so it's a roof over the roof. The owner was not happy with the structure inside because of lighting and things they couldn't show. So for lots of reasons, we looked into how you could get rid of the structure. And so the proposal was to add an exoskeletal structure with an open plenum for environmental reasons, cut the old one out, right? And it produced a roof, the top roof over the real roof, and then allowed the gallery to be free. A room up there like that. So it's a kind of piggyback formal relationship, which is how I've come to the term prepositions. Formal proximities. Okay, now the projects. How are we doing on time? Okay, I gotta hurry. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think there's 6 projects, and most of them are in the show. So this one's over there on the far left. And it's called Half an In House, or House for a House one. And the owner has the White House with a little garage on the right, and they want to turn the garage into a writing studio. There are 2 writers. And when I saw the context, I don't know if I can go back. How do I go back? Red? Okay, never mind. Anyway, you get it. So I was reminded of this project by Johnny Petna, who I studied with, and I always loved this project, but the context is like, I couldn't ignore the image that I knew from Johnny. And I wanted, but I don't know if you know this, but it's like a block of ice around a house, and that was it, right? It was kind of like art project. And this was the proposal. But for me, I wanted to understand how you could occupy it, make that blank spot in the urban context a writing studio, which was light-filled. And so these are the surfaces of the studio that we made, some study models of a garage below, and a writing studio above, and a reading room on the upper floor. And so there's a section. And the books really were important, and the owner asked for a soaking tub in the studio, and so that's where that came from. And this form actually is just a confession I really start relying on in a lot of projects, which is a form that divides a space, a single, into two through the presence of its neighbor, which is what the bowl is doing for me here. So there's the model that's in the show, which is in the back. And this one, I don't know, I hope if you walk by on the way out, there's a sort of study about movement, actually, in the bookcase, and about the prepositional ambiguity between what is beyond and what is behind a division. So here's a study model of that effect of the bookcase, which if you kind of like just move your face across that one, you'll see what I mean. So it was this kind of ambiguity and surface and lightness and heaviness that I was playing with. This is early study model of the upper floor that became the reading room. We called it the womb room. And this is how it ended up. So you come up a stair from the writing studio into the reading room. And it's like kind of a soft bed, basically. When you're rising through the stair, you can see back down into the studio, into the tub. And the door that connects the two is a flexible membrane. So here's the studio with the bookcase that we're talking about, that one. So this is coming from the house. There's a short bridge, and then you enter the studio. And the elevations are like this. So on the left, that's how you connect to the house. That's the back, that's the front, and that's the south side. The plans. On the left is the garage. On the right is or in the middle is the writing studio, and then on the right is the reading room. From the back, and it's wrapped in it's house wrap. It's unfinished materiality, which is translucency, but also waterproof. And these photos were taken by a student photographer, Nathan. He was really fun to work with. I think the client dubbed it the Garage Mahal in the end. It was kind of, it's a lot, right? But anyway, reflection, estrangement, okay. I was also thinking of Melnikov when I was working on this. And this project, I really like it a lot. It's because the two figures have a presence on each other, with each other, etc. So this is just amazing. I won't go into the details, but I love how the domestic half and the studio half demand a presence of each other through this stair. You can see it here in the room, pressing into it, pressing into the room, right? Okay, another one, which is a second model in the show, Bob's House, or House for a House 2. So another attempt at putting a house in relationship with another house. And the other thing I like about Johnny is how he built this kind of frame around the house. So this is Bob's house in Winter Park, Florida. He's an art collector, and he has a lot. It's almost like the house is stuffed with art, like a storage facility. But it's a normal house, let's say. It's not special in a canonical sense or anything. It's a generously sized house in Florida. And he wants to live in the house while the addition is made, which is to provide more space for his collection. And so we propose to put a structural set of tips around the perimeter such that a structure could be built without affecting the interior of the house while it's under construction. And so this is the roof plan of the original with the tips. You can just barely see them coming around on the tight eave side. The plan, which sits above, which is a gallery, this is the kind of axo of that relationship of the parts. And so this swallows the house. This is the new model, actually, that Kay built. 3 students helped in the show, Kay Takanami and Nancy Liu and Emma Scheffer. You'll see their models. So the tips coming out from the original to produce a box around it that doesn't touch the original. But it puts the original on display along with or together with his collection of artifacts and artworks. There you see one in the roof, and the house and the works are treated similar. That's an old model, and the earlier one is Kay's model. So here's some of his work. Actually, there's a friend of mine, a painter, but I put his work in the show. And the roof. This is the section, a gallery ring around old model looking at that relationship. And you can access the house from 2 tips, but from just outside and under the eave, one kind of more directly to the house and one more publicly, so that this can be experienced for visitors only or house party kind of shows. So that's this house around Bob's house. Okay, so this, I don't know exactly how this overlapped but I love the work of Tatsu Nishi, who did this project with the statue of Columbus in Columbus Circle in New York City. Did anyone see this when it was up? No. Well, I want to show it to you. So at the top of this giant column is the statue of Columbus, and Nishi built a scaffold around the column and this little house on the top that encompasses the statue of Columbus. So there's Columbus inside of Nishi's house, completely set, because I think of a clever prepositional act of putting this thing within rather than above and all of that. It's within a domestic environment. It is lost its scalar privilege. It is a domesticated symbol. It's really interesting and I think powerful to cause a new reading of the original through the second. The second is Nishi's house. And now I think about this statue in a different way. Whew. Fuck. Sorry, that's great. Okay? I mean, come on. And it's a near-far thing, right? You get up close to this thing, right? You really understand how it was made, what it's doing. You look out the window at the city with this thing. It's really powerful. What prepositional relationships can do to allow for awareness of one's environment. Okay, another one. How are we doing on time? This is called Pioneer Town House, and it was a house in the Mojave Desert in Pioneer Town. An amazing landscape. That's me on the rock form there on the left side. And the little homestead that we were working on is down to the left, and there's a little garage to the right of the rock formation. And so the challenge was to make an addition out here. And please notice the water tower over to the far left. That's going to come in the conversation at the end. So I went back to Vijay. Well, I didn't. This is coming later, by the way. This is all, the chronology of references and material is not tight. It's anachronistic in a sense. Anyhow, this is another one of Vijay's works, in which I think she calls 11 for 11 or something. And it's just a set of pairs of these found and sculpted, found and sculpted, found and sculpted, right? And so the act of attention is just made more complex and spatial. And so this kind of thing was in mind when I'm working on this project, not necessarily that reference. I'm also thinking about Hayduck here and his original orders of 9. So and deviating from it a little bit. So this is the homestead as an original piece of architecture, and it's really small. It's a like 20 by 20 CMU block, humble house. And so, if this will move, I'm experimenting with the fragments of like parts to the house to interiorize the original, but also to have it work with the architectural comparative act versus the geological comparative act, which is the rock. And the temptation to confuse those two, let's say. And so there's a lot of partners and pairs and sets and at different scales. And those are the more important relationships in the house for me, is that there's a kind of tension between, not unlike Vijay's 11s. So the readings are between the pieces proximate rather than what they refer to. That's the hope. Room below, which is an excavated void under the original homestead. A kind of sectional partner, and in a way, confusion between normal construction sequences and orders, building below a thing, rather. You can see the studio piece to this project in the background here. And the entry forecourt and some interior model pics. And this model is also in, no, not this one, but a version of this is in the show. And then in the landscape, the house around the original. And there's a studio, I'm not going to talk about it in this talk, but a sort of phantom limb to the set is over there, which is what you see in this worm's eye. So backing out of the sequence for how to arrange these house fragments, I was also thinking of Mary Miss's decoys about the void and the positive partners, just in terms of form. And this goes back to Rem's thing and the void and some of that. Interiority, let's call it. Okay, stump house. Apparently, when pioneers were going from the left to right in this country, they, from time to time, made houses out of trees. And I found that fascinating when I was asked to do a studio for an artist, a house and a studio in the California Redwood, Santa Cruz Mountains. Because it was the first time that all of my work to this point was working with an original piece of architecture and adding to it or modifying it in some way. And this was the first site that there was no original piece of architecture. And I'm thinking of this, oh God, I forget her name, Julie something, this kind of protester who lived in a tree for 2 years to protest is being cut down and all of this, like the resource of wood and et cetera. And so the proposal for this house and studio is, with no original, is to produce a series of stumps in the ground, which I was thinking would be made of petrified wood, and to allow a house to sit above it and provide an art studio below. And so this is the basic form, an early model of an art studio below, a small house above, and a very sort of private bedroom, basically, above. This is the worm's eye of the stumps that provide for the clearing. When a redwood dies, it produces a fairy ring, and it produces, several new trees that go around. So in a way, it was trying to find origin in its material resource. And the whole thing, I hope, would be made out of that wood from a tree, one tree. So that's the organization. It's very simple. Rise up, common space, a little core, which is service, and a small bathroom with a bed that faces a very private overlook to this amazing redwood valley. It's incredibly beautiful. So here's the slope, and the view out in the model studies. The models are shown here without ground. I think some of that was I don't know, maybe a choice, Nancy. You had some influence on that. This is the old model of the studio space, and then I think Nancy's model is in here, yeah. And this is the new model that was made for the show. The old model is materially posing. It's painted to look like it's not. The materials are not what they are. In Nancy's model, it's all made of wood. The whole thing. It's really a different mentality for how to make the model. And I found it very surprising, actually. You should look on the underside of it. Nancy's carved out the entire ceiling of this surface. And I'm not going to show it to you, but I want you to look at it. It's that surface underneath this. There's a section, the old model of that like perch space, and this is the new model. Okay. I think 2 more projects. Grace mentioned the Bruges diptych, and this is that project, which is over here by Angelo. Hi, Angelo. This project was a commission from the city of Bruges. They run a triennial with artists and architects, and they put pavilions and things in the city for this festival, et cetera. And does anyone know the city of Bruges? Has anyone been there? Yeah, okay. I mean, it's beautiful, UNESCO protected city. I mean, it's like it has a snow globe over it or something. I mean, it's really amazing, right? And Canal City. And so the project is here in Bruges. And I consider it a house for an unused house because it abuts this house here on the canal, which was the original wall of the city was at this canal's location. This is sort of right outside of the city, and that on the other side, right inside the old city. But it's a residential neighborhood. We walked the city for like days and didn't want to go civic. We wanted to be in a kind of domestic realm, and people live here, and they, that live in Bruges. Except this house is abandoned and empty, and I found that odd. The one here. And I wanted to get in and work on that and et cetera, and the owner was super resistant, so we built a pavilion right in front of it to take a look, to get right up to this unused house as close as we could. And I was reading things like this, and I got super interested in this artist who produced illustrations for this novel, The Death of Bruges, but combined it, a form of photography and a form of pencil work, I believe, or charcoal, to be ambiguously close to each other as forms of representation. I found that interesting, the tension between, is this the photograph or is this the drawing? I don't know. Again, like with the Vija Selmans, it's kind of like this oscillation and therefore causation of attention and reading. And I was, he was a symbolist artist and working also on self-reflexive surrealism, and I found it really compelling work. And these devices that they use in the city as little mirrors for the living, the domestic realm to be aware of what's happening on the street. So they're really beautiful little devices. So the Bruges diptych sits in the canal and divides the block in half, right at the point of the house that it is. It's a kind of duplicate of. It's a duplicate of the unused house, which divides itself into two. And so it's a comparative act with the original, and it's also then trying to make that comparative act within itself. And each side has subtle differences, and the exploration between what is symmetrically known versus serially known is what I'm playing with. So the house in front is a second of the house to the back, and the one to the side is either mirrored or shifted, etc. Those sorts of relationships are in play. It has access only from the canal. We couldn't touch any part of the city. It could not touch. Couldn't touch the house. It couldn't touch the wall. Couldn't touch the canal floor. So it floats on these pontoons and is tethered at these anchors. And so this idea of proximity and being close to make the work, is important. So here it is from the other side. The kind of viewing window into the original, the RCP, and then the two halves. And they're framed differently. I'm also experimenting with scale here a lot. I'm just playing with framing and the familiarity of frequencies, 2x4 construction, at another scale, twice the scale on the other half, for instance. And they're sistered, and so it's allowing the whole thing to feel at another scale because of the sistered framing. And so that's the portal to the original and the plan. And these are Sten Bolyart's photographs. I didn't know him before, but I really like how he documented it. So, I mean, he made these pairings and everything. It's interesting to see how one photographer shoots it, and then these are Iwan Bonds, for instance, and so the light's different, people are in it. It's just interesting to see two photographers shoot the same project. These are some of the models that were made alongside the construction of the thing itself. And so we were making this here while they were making it there. Actually, Tylee Zhang, student of mine, made this model. Very good model builder, and that's his model over there. And these are some of the model pics. He even got the framing, you know. They're really precise. This one is really precise. But while I was working on this project, I also started playing with this form of communication with the builder, actually. but very lightly, but it becomes more important in the next project. Phone sketches. So these are Iwans, and these are Iwans. Mm-hmm. And so, anyway, zooming out, right, near far. Okay, and then gone. So temporality. Okay, and when I was in Bruges, I also, I discovered this. We were walking around a lot, and this was in a church, and it's called the House of Loreto. It's a painting. And I found it fascinating, commentary on the myth of construction. The story is that the house of the Mother of Christ is transported from Bethlehem during the siege of Jerusalem to Loreto, Italy, and it is placed here in Loreto, and a church is built around it. And so I'm working with an artist now on a proposal for the Desert X, which is called Another House of Loreto, and that's the model in the back by James, with the feathers. And this will hang by crane. It's a project with an artist that we're doing in a couple years. And so the last project is called Couple Lean-Tos, and that's the one right here. So that's the silver model, or aluminum model rather, is one that Emma Scheffer built. I saw Emma earlier. I hope she's here. And this one here is one I started building, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. So this is a project for a sculptor and a studio and a house. And it's called Couple Lean-Tos. And it has many, many, many different phases and stages, so I can't really share it all. It's just a long project. And it originally started as 2 structures, and it still is this is the plan. But one of the plans, not quite what it is, was like this. And it's located in upstate New York, in the Hudson Valley. And it's a studio and what will become a house. And the plans evolved a lot over, because this project was physically very close to me. And so I, hold on, yeah, I'll just get there in a second. So it's a 5-sided plan. And the first phase is this studio. There's 2 stages, the studio and the house. This is the one I want to talk about, this one. It's a studio and a small apartment for a sculptor. And the formal conceit is that it's a square and a diamond that meet. It produces a pentagonal plan with multiplies the sides. So the plinth was poured, and we started framing, and that's that model there, to about this point. And Diana, who I'm working with on this project, saw me making this model, and she said, "Why are you making this model that's right? They're building it right there." Like I was building it, trying to build it alongside their framers as they were painting. And I was like, okay, hold on, what do you? And she's a sculptor, and she doesn't plan up front with her work, and she builds it in real time. Not unlike. If you remember my studio critic, Jon Lott, who asked us to just start making the model without drawing too much first, etc. She was, in a way, testing to see if I could try that on site. And so that's what we did. And so that model is a stop at the point at which we were building. This is roughly at that point. And then we started just doing it on site. Just building it right there with drawings and the builder. And so it was like a 1-to-1 study model. That's what it became. And these drawings are just a small, like selection of the process with the builder. And a lot of the ones I show are very loose, but there were a lot of them that actually were more accurate. I wish I had put them in here. And so the framing is happening, and we're sketching, and maybe should we make this wall wider or that taller? How should we exactly do the thing? How are we going to make the span work? And I tried also deliberately to not have too much consultancy, to really try building this thing as a study, and then bringing in the consultants after the fact to offer corrective suggestions. Anyway, we'll see how that goes. Maybe Martin, I'm going to ask you for a crit on this thing. Structural crit. Anyway, so it was like that, and Diane was willing to work that way, and not every client is willing to work that way, and so it was unique, very unique experience. And so we're building, we're drawing, how maybe it should be open like this. This face had a lot of change, the most change of all of them. It was like that. Maybe we would do it like that. Maybe we would have floating panels, etc. Looking at what should be solid, what should be frame, trying to figure out the structure, a little bit naively, I'll admit, but with some good coaching. And so I played with this truss. It's a 55-foot truss. I had never, without a ridge beam at the top. And this is like not what we built exactly, but it's like a big box truss that probably needs a little help. But it was very fun to try to build in situ and design it as we went. To produce this clearing between two sides, a sort of studio half and a little bit of like support core, and then the upper loft is a little apartment. And so some of the construction photos show in situ decisions that we're making and drawing and considering as we go. This is not structural, it's really a track that is hanging from the wood truss that we made. And this is a gantry so that she can hoist things up under the truss from opening to opening in the plan. Still thinking of how to interiorize this, some of these, let's say, mezzanine-like spaces and things on the inside. Some more recent photos of it, and now beginning to be used, but still kind of moving in and making as it gets occupied, not predetermining too much inside, so that her working method will, and then we'll make the additions, and then we'll add that kind of thing. So it's a work in progress. A lot of people ask, when will it be done? God. Anyway, when will it be done? When will a work of architecture be done? Can you answer that question? Adam, what do you think? Can it be done? Anyway, I like the question because I don't think this project will never be done. Just keep working on it. But it's occupiable now. She's starting to use it. It has large doors so she can move things in and out, different heights, at grade. Also has like a loading dock, and it is a work in progress. So. Let me go back. I don't know how to go back. How do I go back? Red one. That's this one. No, it's not. It's a different one. Yeah. Sorry, Scott. We can go back to some later. And then lastly, there's a couple new projects that are under construction now. And this is a shed for a shed, shop for a shop. It's a shop for, which is turned into a parallelogram for a rectangle. And these are some of the sketches that's being built now for this neighbor of mine there. And then this, lastly, I won't show you, 5 barn conversion project, which is happening in Sharon, Connecticut, also under construction now. And then this is my newest thing coming out soon with Park Books, edited by and with Julie Cirelli. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jon. That was really very beautiful to see the work. We do have time for a few questions, so I hope that's okay. Maybe I'll start off, and then I would love to. I can see a very large group here, so I'm sure there are a lot of questions. I'll turn it over. So, what you've shared with us, and again, we get a chance to sit immersively in this exhibit, which is very unique, and I'm excited about that. After hearing you talk about it, it's very clear that, first of all, you have quite a unique voice, and that you're drawing inspiration or inputs from a diverse range of sources and many artistic references and thoughts. And these are not producing, let's say, a direct analog one-to-one. In other words, it's this art project you're looking at, and therefore it becomes this architecture project. You know, it's diverse. It goes into your head, and it comes out in a very unique, unpredictable way in some cases. And so I'm kind of curious. Can you talk a little bit more about that process, the moment at which you're absorbing a lot of different influences, and then it's producing a kind of work.
Yeah.
I said, and maybe a corollary to the question of process is that teachable? If so, how? Again, we can get this conversation going.
Okay, yeah. No, I like that question. Thanks, Grace. And I think of influence as just kind of unavoidable, things that one is concerned about at any time. It's weighing on you and whatever, and you come across a work of art that resonates with you, let's call it. What does that mean? I don't know, but it does, and it stands out, and you like it, and you chew on it, and it makes you think, and as Letham would say, and this is why Letham's important for me, you use it. You use that thought, that input, and you try a version of it yourself, the idea of what so that's Letham on influence, and the second use of it. If it doesn't get used by you, then anyway, you don't benefit from the iterations in culture, all that. So that second use is really important. Is it teachable? I hope so. I mean, and I play with it a bit in light ways and sometimes in very direct ways. And mostly the seminar does that. And from those, I don't know if there's anyone here from the seminar, maybe could offer a little bit more on how that's constructed to produce a test for students not presenting their work, but having their work be read. Let me pause on that for a second. And so we do this with the students. We do this imaginary exercise, and they all imagine a similar scene, and then they have to go to work in a stunted form to show it to each other without words, all using the same material limit, and to communicate with each other their scene. And then they're shared each week, they're diptychs, and the students read them, and then no one says anything, and they go back and they make another one, and they get read, and they make another one. And they begin to communicate their scenes with there's actually a work of architecture in it too. And so each one is coming to that thing with their own influences. They're not precedents handed to them, they're the influences of the students. And then that work is read by their peers. And for me, that's an experiment in how to communicate your influences. And we can go more into that if that's of interest, but that was the experiment in that. Yeah. Yeah, Gary.
Thanks, John. It's really great work. Scaling up. I'm curious about the last, let's say, built but not completed project.
Mm-hmm.
It seems amazing to be able to be tentative or provisional and to change your mind. And why wouldn't that be a great thing? Because you can draw as much as you want. You can even make little models, but you're always going to be surprised. And you propose that we would then have the ability to change. What I'm curious about, though, is that in every town in America, a building like this is a negotiation with the town. And you have to have a building permit. You have a town engineer stamp the drawing. You have your foundation permit, your foundation inspection, your framing inspection,
Right.
plumbing inspection, electrical inspection. Are you proposing that system be changed and that we trust the designer more? I like that idea.
I mean, I do think there's, those checks are in place for good reasons, and I agree. I mean, and that makes it difficult maybe to work like this. You're not wrong. But it's still very possible, especially in smaller town, in jurisdictions where actually it's very personal relationship. It's not the kind of bureaucracy in New York where you have, and I'm not working at that scale. At that scale, I don't think this is really likely. I mean, I don't know. Right, so it works at a small scale, I think. And I like working at a small scale. I think it's taught me many things about construction sequences and just the physics of material and how things are built and the economy of the assemblies. And I pay way more attention to that now, having done this in ways that I feel like we the submission of drawings and the amount of specialization that goes into sometimes don't really scale down to something that architects can do more of, and not rely so much on at the scale, I think.
On exactitude.
Yeah. Right.
There's a parallel in my work. I mean, because I draw grading plans and planting plans, I have the freedom to change a whole lot of it on site, and we do all the time.
Yeah, and how is that? I mean, is that nice, having that liberty and flexibility?
You can't imagine it otherwise.
Yeah, right. It sort of has to be that way, and I think sometimes the bureaucracy is so tight, and so they got you by, and you sort of like can't. You can't really just build, and I think we've over-bureaucratized.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. This is the first time I've heard you speak about your work as a holistic project, so that was such a treat. I have a question about how you perceive the issue of resolution in your work. A lot of your questions of reflection, diptychs, doubling, twinning, or borrowing, in the end, actually are very cleanly resolved. So when we look at the Bruges diptych, for instance, if there is, two different scales of framing, let's say, they actually work very synchronously with each other. There's no real conflict in the end of either, things are a little bit sort of offbeat, and then there's a moment of conflict between the two. They work very well with each other, and that's clearly very deliberate. With other examples like Stump House, for instance, there is, a potential opportunity for the foundation or the platform base of the house resting on top of these, found objects, potentially yielding either a new way of thinking about, foundation or some kind of conflict, let's say. And I'm curious what your attitude is towards that. Why is everything so nicely resolved? It's nice. I mean, I think we all love it, and you. But I'm curious about that, like where you find.
Would you say the same for this one? I mean, I don't. That one really doesn't. It's pretty low res. Like it's very inaccurate in a way when you zoom. I mean, and if you come visit, maybe then you'll see. But it's like it's like really like crass details. It's like. So that one's maybe more like what you're. I don't know what you're.
I don't know. I mean, I haven't spent enough time with it, but I'm just curious. Maybe just
I hear you.
Where
This
do you
one's very
find moments
neat.
of opportunity? I guess where if you're leveraging this idea of twinning, or borrowing or doubling, where in your projects have you found maybe moments of conflict that have become, potent for inventing something new? Let's say.
I don't know. I mean, conflict is kind of. I guess that I don't think of it that way. I think of contingencies that are in play for any project, which are are the things which govern whether its resolution is slightly this way or slightly that way, because there's different people involved, and it's it's like each project has a lot of contingencies and those aren't conflicts. They're just the filter through which a project has to go through. And so some are a lot less resolved, I think, and some are like kind of tighter. But that's just a result of the clients and et cetera, and builders, actually. Contingencies, I think. Go ahead.
Rowan.
John, thanks so much. Really a pleasure. I was thinking about Frank Gehry's house and the kind of riffing that he's doing on his own house over time and testing things, testing.
Yeah.
Maybe it fails and that's okay. But I'm trying to think about, like, was there Bilbao without the house? Like, could you have Bilbao without having gone through all that testing? And I'd love hearing you say, like, I think about material differently now because I have literally done it.
Yeah.
And I've torn it off and I've put it back. And that kind of hands-onness. But I was thinking about futures and how does this transform or scale? Is there a Bilbao version of your kind of speculative riffing with tectonics that you could imagine?
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine it for sure. I mean, I think it takes the right builder, to work that way. And also, I don't assume that working that way when it's scaled, it would be different, I would imagine. But I see it as scalable, absolutely, yeah. I don't know, yeah. Right.
I think we should hear from the students, but just to follow that, everything is balloon frame, if I'm understanding it. And I think maybe coming back to both these questions, maybe the balloon frame either gives you a lot of flexibility because it doesn't push back as much in Iman's term. It doesn't produce contradictions. Balloon frame does a lot, but is it a neutral plastic medium for you, or do you get juice from the balloon frame?
I like the balloon. I mean, because it's flexible, because you can make. You can work within a certain economy because there's a known system in place rather than the time spent, the energy spent, money spent on novelty. That's a part of it for me a bit too, and the framing can scale up to a certain point, of course, and I like where it starts to reach its max. Actually, I'm very curious about. And some of these are an effort to get framing to be a little bigger than itself, and I know it's still within the realm of framing and smallness, but the sistering logic is something I find that has come from framing in its desire to work past itself, let's say, past its scale of its parts. So can it work in a different material? Sure. Would it? I could see a lot of ways in like prefab panels, and very easily. A little bit is reliance on constructions, methods, and systems. This is a very particular one, framing. Well, tilt-up concrete is another one, and you could tilt things up like wines or something like that, and start operating at a bigger scale. Yeah.
I mean, the way I'm reading that's the question about the framing, and then the projects in which you are using wood frame as the medium. It's the closest that, in a way, that one can get to an art practice because it's so forgiving, and you can manipulate it. It's a very conventional construction technique, so you can manipulate it into form quite easily and at your own will, which takes something that is rather banal in America, and it lets you have a voice through it. And probably the project there is the closest that you get to, and it happens to be for an artist, of working like an artist. So maybe another question that I'm having that's inspired by these questions is, what do you think is at stake in the discipline today, and how does your body of work respond to it? Because I think you have a very particular line right now that, that to me, that the way that this exhibition hangs together, and maybe where do you see that? What are the issues at stake?
Well, a couple issues. I mean, one of the bigger ones is resourcefulness and sustainability, let's call it. And within that realm of concern, I see operating locally and at a small scale, and with local materials that are available locally, and this idea of a smaller footprint as one way that architects can contribute to the waste of construction and the cost of material movement, et cetera, at large scales. And I think the more and more we send people into big firms to work for big projects and bigness, we have a harder time fighting that part of the social, cultural, political, environmental concerns. And so I like working small. I think there's a lot of power as an architect just working locally at a small scale for people who need housing and places to work. And this, I think, is, for me, become a method that is, I notice has really, important impacts on people who need to live and work in places. And I think it's an easily deployable method, and the familiarity of working at a very small domestic scale is multipliable. And I think we can talk about scale in two ways. Let's make bigger things for everyone, and that's important. But I think we can also work at the level of the domestic in very effective ways on the ground, locally, with clients more directly. I like that scale too. I think that's an important scale to operate at. Yeah.
I have a question, but if there's a student, I think we should give time to students.
Hey, John.
Hi.
Beautiful work. My question was on if you've had someone read your project that's not an architect that surprised you.
Well, the Garage Mahal might be one. Yeah. Wendy Goodman did a reading of that house, and she called it Seussian. Like Dr. Seuss, yeah. Fine. I didn't expect that reading, but that's her reading.
Thank you. Jon, it's so enjoyable to discuss your work in this intimate nature. Is it on?
I can hear you though.
Hello? Okay. I have sort of an obvious question, maybe, but in this task of Stobling, this is an exhibition on models, and the models, like that sculptor, are the representation of the object, like the sculptor of the stone that you showed us. And it seemed to me that in different projects, models were done at different stages, sometimes before the project, sometimes as you were doing the project, and then in the last one, you sort of dismissed the model. And they seem to me also to be these are very particular type of models with the balloon frame, because you are building that structure. In other models, one in a different type of construction technology, you might abstract beams, right? They might not show. But you are actually doing that formal labor of looking at those intersections in the models that we have been looking at. So could you perhaps speak a little bit more to crafting the models in the design process? How does that happen?
Yeah, it happens by building them. It really does. I mean, once you start thinking about how a thing needs to be built, I think that's the essence of what you're talking about. I mean, honestly, it's that predicament and that question about material and prepositions of those things, tectonics, right? And if you look at each of the pairings here, some of them are anachronistic. Like some of them were made as an object to study what might be built at a larger scale, right? So it's a very scalar method. Scale is very important in this, for me, at least. I think it's fundamental, right, to the communication of architecture. Anyhow, I think when you make these comparisons between, let's say, a one made for the show, like the one right back there, Nancy made that for the show. We didn't make that to show the client. Client's never seen that model ever, right? But in a way, we wanted to make some pairings of a reading. So Nancy's is a reading, actually, of the other model. And I love what she did with it. Now we're using that one as an example, right? And we can make it like this, or we can make it like that.
The models are representational of the building. The building is the building, I would assume you think.
Yeah.
That's a very different thing. I mean, in other words, the processes by which you undertake to build the building.
By the way, isn't that just a scalar understanding that we've all come to? Once it's this scale that we can get inside of, it's a building. It's built just like a model. Hold on. And it's this big so you can't occupy it, or it's this big so you can.
But I'm saying the tectonics, and everything we've been discussing, the balloon framing that Michael and Grace were discussing with you. I mean, literally the tectonic and structural performance of it, the reality of it, the factual presence of it is at the full scale, not mimetic.
Yes.
In the same way that it is in a physical model where you're not.
Scales.
Yeah, you don't have the nails. You don't have those. Every one of the details that I see, for example, in that photograph cannot be manifest.
Right, but you can approximate.
And need not be in the
But you can
model.
approximate those things. Those, like the cared craft, we call it craft, or we can call it how.
It could be an analogy to it in the model.
At a certain point, the scale is a problem, yes, to make those decisions. So maybe you have full-scale mock-ups to
But I guess my question is not so much to argue whether one is the representation of the other. That's just one point. But the point I wanted to ask you was whether your architecture ever represents something discovered in the model. The model in its effort to represent the physical tectonic at at the real scale, so to speak. The model is trying to represent that. Do you feel that it's ever the other way around, where the building tries to represent the model? Because I think that's what happens in Gary.
Yeah.
And in that leap to Gary's
I see.
Bilbao.
Yes, he wants the building to look like a model. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think he would wad up paper or, bend metal at the scale of a model, and then he tried to make a building be that at the giant scale.
Right. And so yes.
Different relationship.
How
It's
do
a
you scale
reversal.
up? Yeah. How do you scale up a technique that is productive in the model but can't really be built that way? And so the translational of yes.
So I'm just wondering whether when you do undertake your leap of scale, and Michael asked that question, I'm thinking maybe it's going to involve a representation of your models in a particular way. In the building. The building will be a representation of the model.
Yeah, that's very, that's what's happening now with the next two projects. It's like the models are communication tools for the project. Yeah. Yes, right.
Hi, John. Great talk. I was really interested in the final project you showed about how it bears like the consequences of its design, and you showing all those sketches, imagining the hundreds of different structures that could have been built had you gone down one road or the other.
Right.
So I think I wanted to ask, what's the value you see in showing these traces of design in your architecture versus this kind of immaculate project that is put onto the site?
Well, I'm sort of experimenting, relying a little bit more on the process of making it, and the projects take a long time. Architecture is very slow. Things change during, like initial drawings and what can be built. All of this can be a frustration at a point of clarifying every detail versus, okay, this is a system we know, everyone's kind of like, the builders are experienced, and it's going to be basically like this, and can you build it? It's just a different mentality that then the aesthetics of that show themselves, right, as not perfect, I think, whatever that means, right? So, and I'm increasingly okay with that. I think in the beginning, for me, that was like an anxiety, right? To have everything sort of like neat and perfect. So it's less so, which I think is, for me anyway, is a product of chasing an image. You can make it this way at first, and then you want to adhere to the image rather than the inevitable, again, inevitable need to modify those and to get it to become something else real at a different scale, right? And that takes a long time. Any architectural project, years to do, 5, 8, 6, 8, 10 years to work on projects. And so things change. And then so I'm curious about an architecture that just admits that, right? That's just like, okay, now we had to do this, and then we did it like that because we couldn't do it like this. And you know what I mean? Or these materials are available, or these ones now are cheaper, and all of that, right, I think are the contingencies that affect the image of a project that you're trying to adhere to. It's got to look like this, damn it, or else, And that I think we suffer as architects a bit without the agility to change through those economic and social realities. Politics change lots, right, during a project.
Thank you so much, John. Great to see your work. Thank you all for coming to our first position. So
thank you.
thank
Thanks for
you.
having me.
Terrific to see you.